The stars had watched humanity for millions of years, but the Galactic Council had only been watching for 10. 10 years since a small human ship had crossed the invisible line that marked the edge of known space. 10 years since the Council learned they were not alone in their corner of the universe. High Arbiter Velcro stood before the great window of the Council station, his tall gray body still as stone. Behind him, hundreds of representatives from 100 different worlds whispered among themselves. They had gathered to discuss the same problem. They had discussed many times before. The humans would not talk to them. Ambassador Thrynia entered the chamber, her blue skin shimmering under the artificial lights. She had just returned from her 5th mission to the human solar system, and like all the missions before it, she had returned with nothing. "High Arbiter," she said, bowing her head slightly, "I must report another failure." Velcros did not turn from the window. "Tell me what happened." Thrynia took a breath. "I arrived at the edge of their system 3 cycles ago. I transmitted our standard greeting in 17 languages. I sent the invitation to join the Council, along with all the benefits we have offered before. Free access to hyperspace routes, protection under galactic law, trade agreements that took other species centuries to earn. And their response? There was no response, High Arbiter. Nothing at all." A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Counselor Zorath, a massive creature covered in dark scales, rose from his seat. He represented the Kethany Empire, the oldest and most powerful civilization in the Council. "This is an insult," Zorath growled. "No species has ever ignored the Council. We have welcomed thousands of civilizations into our community. We have shared knowledge and resources freely. And these humans simply pretend we do not exist?" Thrynia raised her hands in a calming gesture. "I do not believe it is an insult, Counselor. I observed their communications during my visit. They know we are here. They discussed my arrival in their news broadcasts. They are choosing not to respond." "That is worse," Zorath said. "Ignorance can be forgiven. Deliberate silence is a challenge." High Arbiter Velcros finally turned from the window. His ancient eyes moved across the chamber, and the whispers faded into silence. "We will try again," he said. "We have been patient with young species before. Perhaps humans simply need more time to understand what we offer." Far away in the human solar system, Captain Danny Hartwell sat in the command chair of his patrol vessel, the Starward Horizon. He was a tall man with tired eyes and steady hands, the kind of officer who had seen enough trouble to know when more was coming. Lieutenant Katie Monroe stood at the communications station nearby. She was younger than the captain, with quick eyes and a sharp mind. Her job was to listen to the void of space and make sense of whatever came back. "Captain," she said, "the alien ship is leaving." "Same as always. No attempt at closer contact." Danny nodded slowly. "Log it and send the report to Admiral Castillo." "Same protocol as last time?" Katie turned back to her station, but she hesitated. "Sir, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Why don't we just talk to them?" "I've translated their messages. They seem friendly. They're offering us things that could change everything for humanity. Better engines, medical technology, access to worlds we've never seen." Danny was quiet for a moment. Through the viewport, he could see the distant light of the alien ship as it prepared to jump away. "You're right," he said. "They are offering us a lot? But have you ever wondered why?" Katie frowned. "Because they want us to join their council? And what does that mean? Joining their council?" She thought about it. Participating in their government. Following their rules? Being part of their system. Exactly. Danny leaned back in his chair. "The Galactic Council has existed for thousands of years. They have rules for everything. Trade regulations, travel permits, diplomatic protocols. Every decision requires approval from hundreds of species. Every new idea has to be debated for decades before anyone can act on it." "That sounds frustrating." "It's more than frustrating, Lieutenant. It's a trap. Once we join, we play by their rules forever. We become one voice among hundreds. We wait in line for permission to grow, to build, to explore. Our future gets decided by committee. Katie was silent for a moment. So we stay quiet because we want to stay free. We stay quiet because we're not ready yet. Humanity is young, Katie. We've only been in space for a couple hundred years. These aliens have been out here for millennia. If we join their council now, we'll always be the small ones. The newcomers. The species that needs protection and guidance. And if we wait? Danny smiled slightly. If we wait, we build our own strength. We develop our own technology. We expand to our own worlds. And when we finally do sit down at their table, we sit as equals. On Earth, Admiral Diane Castillo received the report from the starward horizon. She read it in her office, a simple room with bare walls and a single window that looked out over the city below. Dr. Marcus Webb sat across from her, waiting. He was the chief science officer for Earth's interstellar program, a quiet man who preferred data to opinions. Another visit, Castillo said. Another invitation? Another offer of friendship and cooperation. Marcus nodded. Their technology is impressive. Based on my analysis of their transmissions, they're at least 1,000 years ahead of us in most fields. Their medical science alone could extend human life by decades. And all we have to do is join their council. That appears to be the requirement, yes. Castillo set down the report. What do you think would happen if we said yes? If we sent a delegation tomorrow and signed whatever treaties they wanted us to sign? Marcus considered the question carefully. In the short term, we would gain access to incredible resources, new technologies, new trading partners, protection from any threats in the galaxy. And in the long term? In the long term, we would become dependent on them. Our economy would integrate with theirs. Our military would fall under their command structure. Our politicians would spend their time arguing over council resolutions instead of building our own future. Within a few generations, humanity would be just another member species. Not leaders. Not pioneers, just participants. Castillo looked out the window. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Then we continue as planned, she said. No response. No contact. Let them send as many ambassadors as they want. We have work to do. Back on the council station, High Arbiter Velcros watched the stars turn slowly beyond the great window. He had led the council for 300 years. He had welcomed countless species into the galactic community. He had solved disputes that threatened to tear civilizations apart, but he had never encountered a species that simply refused to speak. What are you hiding? He whispered to the distant point of light that was humanity's sun. What are you planning in your silence? The stars did not answer. Neither did the humans. And so the council waited and wondered and worried. 2 years passed, and the silence continued. The Galactic Council sent mission after mission to human space. Trade ships arrived carrying samples of rare minerals found only on distant worlds. Science vessels came with databases containing 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Military representatives promised protection from the dangers that lurked in the dark spaces between stars. Every mission received the same response. No response at all. Ambassador Threnia had made the journey 14 times now. Each trip took weeks of travel through hyperspace, followed by days of waiting at the edge of the human solar system. She would transmit her messages, watch human ships observe her from a distance, and eventually return home empty-handed. The experience was changing her. She had spent her entire career as a diplomat, skilled at reading other species, understanding their needs, finding common ground. But humans were different. They were a puzzle she could not solve. You are becoming obsessed, Counselor Zorath told her one evening. They stood together on an observation deck, watching transport ships come and go from the station. These creatures are not worth your attention. Threnia shook her head. You are wrong, Counselor. They are worth everyone's attention. Have you seen the latest reports from our observers? I have seen them. The humans are expanding. New colonies on new worlds. Larger ships. More advanced weapons. This is why they should be stopped now, before they become a threat. That is exactly my point. Threnia turned to face him. They are advancing faster than any species in Council records. When we first detected them, they had barely learned to travel between their own planets. Now they have settlements in 3 different star systems. They are building ships that approach the speed of our own. And they are doing all of this without any help from us. Zorith made a dismissive sound. Primitive creatures can learn quickly when they steal ideas from their betters. They are not stealing, Counselor. We have monitored their communications carefully. They are developing their own technology, following their own research. They are not copying us. They are ... innovating. This word seemed to disturb Zorith. The Cathani Empire had ruled the Council for generations precisely because innovation was rare in the galaxy. Most species were content to use the technology that already existed, following paths that had been established long ago. The idea of a young species creating new paths was uncomfortable. All the more reason to bring them under control, Zorith said. Independent innovation is dangerous. It leads to instability, to conflict. The Council exists precisely to prevent such chaos. Threnia did not argue further. She knew Zorith's mind was closed on this matter. But she also knew that force would not solve the problem. The humans had shown no aggression. They had threatened no one. They had simply asked in their own silent way to be left alone on the human colony world of New Haven. Dr. Marcus Webb walked through a research facility that had not existed 2 years ago. The building stretched for nearly a kilometer, filled with laboratories and testing chambers and equipment that pushed the boundaries of human science. Admiral Castillo walked beside him. She had made the long journey from Earth specifically to see this facility, to understand what her scientists were building. Impressive, she said, looking around at the busy workers and glowing screens. Very impressive. But I need results, Marcus, not just impressive buildings. Results are coming, Admiral. Marcus led her to a sealed chamber at the heart of the facility. Through a thick window, she could see a ring of metal and crystal, perhaps 10 meters across, suspended in the center of the room. It glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. What am I looking at? Castillo asked. A prototype. Very early stage. But if our theories are correct, this ring will eventually open a doorway to another location in space. Not hyperspace travel like the aliens use. Something different. Something that does not require their roots or their permission? Castillo studied the glowing ring. How far can it reach? We don't know yet. The physics suggests there may be no limit at all. We could potentially reach other galaxies. Places no Council ship has ever gone. When will it be ready? Marcus hesitated. Years, maybe decades. The energy requirements are enormous. The calculations are incredibly complex. And we are working without any guidance, building everything from scratch. But it can be done. Yes, Admiral. It can be done? Castillo nodded slowly. This was why they had chosen silence. This was why they had refused every invitation, ignored every offer. The Council wanted humanity to join their system, to follow their rules, to use their technology. But if humanity could develop something truly new, something the Council had never seen, then the balance of power would shift forever. Captain Danny Hartwell received orders to bring the Starward Horizon to New Haven for a briefing. He arrived 3 days later and was escorted to a conference room where Admiral Castillo and several other high-ranking officers waited. Captain, Castillo said as he took his seat, I have a new assignment for you. One that requires absolute discretion. Danny straightened in his chair. Whatever you need, Admiral. The aliens are getting restless. Our observers report increased activity near our borders. More ships. More scanning. They are watching us more closely than ever before. Are they preparing for military action? We don't think so. Not yet. But they are clearly concerned about our growth. They see us expanding, building, developing, and they don't understand what we are doing. That uncertainty is making them nervous. Lieutenant Katie Monroe spoke up from her seat nearby. Nervous aliens might be more dangerous than confident ones, Admiral. Agreed. Which is why I need Captain Hartwell to do something important. Castillo turned back to Danny. I want you to watch them. Take the starward horizon to the edge of our territory. Monitor their movements. Learn their patterns. And most importantly, make sure they do not discover what we are building here. Danny understood immediately. You want me to be a distraction? I want you to be visible. When their ships come to observe us, I want them to see you. A simple patrol vessel going about routine business. Nothing threatening. Nothing suspicious. Let them focus on you while our real work continues in the background. It was a dangerous assignment. Danny would be operating at the very limit of human space, within scanning range of alien vessels, with no backup if something went wrong. But he also understood the importance of the mission. I'll need some upgrades to my ship, he said. Better sensors. Faster engines. If I'm going to dance with alien observers, I want to be able to get away if the music stops. Castillo smiled slightly. You'll have everything you need, Captain. This mission is too important to fail. Back on the council station, High Arbiter Velcros called an emergency session of the full assembly. Representatives from every member species gathered in the great chamber, filling the tiered seats that rose in circles around the central speaking platform. Brothers and sisters of the council, Velcros began, his voice carrying through the massive space. We face a situation unlike any in our history. A new species has emerged. They have been offered our friendship, our knowledge, our protection, and they have refused everything. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Velcros raised a hand for silence. Some among us believe this refusal is an insult that demands punishment. Others believe the humans are simply afraid and need more time. I believe neither explanation is correct. He paused, letting his words settle over the crowd. I believe the humans are building something. I believe they have a plan that requires independence from our community. And I believe that if we do not discover what that plan is, we may one day regret our patience. Counselor Zorath rose from his seat. Then let us take action, High Arbiter. Send a fleet to their borders. Demand answers. Show them that the Council will not be ignored. And risk a war with an unknown enemy? Thranea countered. We know almost nothing about their military capabilities. They have kept their weapons hidden, their strategy secret. Attacking blindly would be foolish. The debate continued for hours. Voices rose and fell. Arguments were made and countered. But in the end, no decision was reached. The council could not agree on a course of action. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Velcro stood alone on the central platform. He thought about the humans, so silent and determined. He thought about the future, so uncertain and unclear. What are you building? He wondered again. And will we be ready when you finish? The fleet arrived on a cold morning in the 7th year. 200 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of human territory. They represented every major power in the Galactic Council, the largest gathering of military vessels in recent memory. At the front of the formation flew the Council flagship. Carrying High Arbiter Velcros himself, Captain Danny Hartwell watched them come. He sat in the command chair of the starward horizon, his crew working silently around him. Katie Monroe stood. At the communications station, her hands steady despite the tension in the air. 200 ships, she reported, mixed armaments, heavy shields. They brought everything. Danny nodded slowly. They're scared. Look at their formation, defensive spacing, overlapping shield coverage. They came expecting a fight. Will they get one? Not from us. Our orders are clear, observe and report, nothing more. The alien fleet settled into position, forming a massive wall of metal and energy that blocked the stars. For several minutes, nothing happened. The two sides simply watched each other across the empty space between them. Then the transmission came. Velcros appeared on the starward horizon's main screen, his gray face filling the display. He looked older than the images Danny had seen before, tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, Velcros began. I am High Arbiter Velcros of the Galactic Council. For 7 of your years, we have extended the hand of friendship. We have offered you knowledge, protection, and partnership. You have answered our kindness with silence. Danny leaned forward slightly, studying the alien leader's expression. There was frustration there, certainly, but also something else, something that looked almost like fear. This cannot continue, Velcros went on. The Council has been patient. We have tried to understand your strange behavior. But patience has its limits. Today we deliver an ultimatum. The word hung in the air like a physical weight. You will send a delegation to meet with Council representatives within 30 of your standard days. This delegation will explain your actions and negotiate the terms of your entry into the galactic community. Refusal is no longer acceptable. If no delegation arrives, the Council will have no choice but to classify humanity as a rogue civilization and respond accordingly. The transmission ended. The alien fleet remained in position, waiting, on Earth. Admiral Diane Castillo watched the same message in her office. Dr. Marcus Webb sat beside her, his face pale. Respond accordingly, Marcus repeated. What does that mean? It means whatever they want it to mean. Castillo stood and walked to her window. Trade sanctions? Travel restrictions? Maybe worse. They're leaving themselves room to escalate. Should we respond? Castillo was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the sun was rising over the city, painting the buildings in shades of gold and orange. Another ordinary day for the billions of people who had no idea their future hung in the balance. No, she said finally. We stay silent, Marcus stared at her. Admiral, they brought 200 ships. They're threatening to treat us as enemies. Surely we can offer them something. Some explanation, some promise of future cooperation. And what happens then? We send a delegation. We start talking. We get pulled into their system of endless debates and negotiations. We spend the next decade arguing over treaty terms while our real work sits unfinished. Castillo turned to face him. How much longer until the gateway is ready? Marcus hesitated. 3 years, maybe 4. The latest tests have been promising, but we're still working through power stability issues. Then we need 3 years of silence, 3 years of waiting. 3 years of letting them wonder what we're doing while we finish what we started. They won't wait 3 years, Admiral. This ultimatum has a 30-day deadline. And then we'll see what happens when the deadline passes. On the border, Captain Danny Hartwell held position. The alien fleet watched. The human ship watched back. Neither side moved. Days passed. The Council fleet remained in place, an immense display of power designed to intimidate and impress. But Danny noticed something as time went on. The aliens were nervous. Their ships maintained defensive positions. Their weapons stayed powered, but not targeted. They were ready to protect themselves, but they showed no eagerness to attack. They're waiting for us to do something, Katie observed on the 15th day. Make a move. Send a message, anything. And every day we do nothing, they get more uncertain. Danny watched the distant lights of the alien formation. They came here expecting quick results, a scared young species that would fall in line at the first show of force. Instead, they got silence. How long can silence be a strategy? As long as it takes. On the Council flagship, High Arbiter Velcros spent sleepless nights in his private chambers. The ultimatum had seemed so simple when Counselor Zorth proposed it. Display overwhelming force. Demand immediate response. End the years of confusion once and for all, but the humans were not responding. Not with submission, not with aggression. Not with anything. Zorth stormed into Velcros' quarters on the 20th day, his scales bristling with frustration. This is humiliating. We brought the greatest fleet in Council history, and they ignore us like we are insects buzzing around their heads. They are testing us, Velcros said quietly. Testing us? They should be terrified. They should be begging for mercy. And yet they are not. Velcros turned to look at the counselor. What does that tell you? Zorth opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. For perhaps the first time in the long debate over humanity, he had no ready answer. They are not afraid of us, Velcros continued. Despite our numbers, despite our technology, Despite the power we represent, they look at this fleet and they feel no fear. Why would that be? Because they are fools. Or because they have something we do not know about. Something that makes them confident even in the face of overwhelming odds. The thought troubled both of them. They had assumed humanity was simply stubborn, perhaps primitive, certainly foolish. But confidence without fear suggested something else entirely. It suggested preparation, planning, hidden strength waiting to be revealed. The 30th day arrived. The deadline passed. No human delegation came. No message was sent. The silence continued, absolute and unbroken. On the council flagship, the representatives gathered for an emergency session. The mood was tense, angry, confused. They had made threats and received no response. Now they had to decide what to do next. We must attack, Zorith demanded. We have made a promise. If we do not keep it, we will look weak. Attack with what justification? Threnia countered. The humans have not threatened us. They have not attacked anyone. They have simply refused to speak. Is silence now a crime worthy of war? It is defiance. It is disrespect. It is their choice. The Council has never forced a species to join. We have always welcomed volunteers. If we attack humanity for refusing our invitation, we become something we have never been before. We become conquerors. The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and rejected. Proposals were offered and dismissed. The fleet waited outside, ready for orders that never came. Captain Danny Hartwell received a transmission from Admiral Castillo at midnight on the 31st day. The deadline has passed, Castillo said. What is the fleet doing? Danny looked out at the distant alien ships. They had not moved. Their weapons remained inactive. Their formation held, but there was something different about it now. Something uncertain. Nothing, Admiral. They're doing nothing. Then we've won for now. For now? Castillo's expression was serious but satisfied. They came here expecting us to fold. We didn't. Now they have to decide whether they're really willing to start a war over our silence. Based on what I'm seeing, they're not ready for that decision. What happens next? They go home. They debate. They argue. They spend months or years trying to figure out what to do. Castillo leaned closer to the camera. And while they talk, we work. The gateway is closer every day, Captain. We just need more time. I understand, Admiral. I know you do. That's why I'm trusting you to keep watching. They'll try again eventually. They're too proud to accept this embarrassment forever. But every day they delay is another day for us. 1 week later, the alien fleet began to withdraw. The ships jumped away one by one, returning to their distant corners of the galaxy. High Arbiter Velcros was among the last to leave. Before he went, he stood at the viewport of his flagship and looked toward human space one final time. You have won this round, he said quietly, though no one was there to hear him. But the game is not over. The Council has a long memory, and eventually you will have to answer for your silence. The flagship jumped away. The border was quiet once more on the starward horizon. Captain Danny Hartwell watched the last alien ship disappear into the void. Katie Monroe stood beside him, relief and tension mixed on her face. They actually left, she said. I wasn't sure they would. Neither was I. Danny turned away from the viewport. But we bought ourselves more time. Now the real work begins. What real work? Danny smiled slightly. I'll tell you when I'm allowed to. For now, just know that everything we've done, all this waiting and silence, has been for something bigger than you can imagine. Katie wanted to ask more questions, but she could see that her captain had said all he was going to say. She returned to her station and focused on her duties. 5 years had passed since humanity first crossed into known space. 5 years of silence. 5 years of growing confusion for the Galactic Council. Ambassador Threnia had been given a new assignment. She was no longer making diplomatic journeys to human space. Instead, she had been ordered to study humanity from a distance, to analyze every piece of information that could be gathered, to understand, finally, why these strange creatures refused to speak. She worked in a small office on the council station. surrounded by screens that displayed human news broadcasts, scientific papers, cultural recordings, and military observations. She had learned their languages, studied their history, and watched thousands of hours of their daily lives. What she found both fascinated and troubled her. "They are not what we expected," she reported to High Arbiter Velcros one morning. He had come to her office personally, something he rarely did for anyone. "Explain," Velcros said, his ancient eyes scanning the screens around them. "When we first detected humans, we assumed they were like every other emerging species, young, eager, ready to learn from their elders. But they are different, High Arbiter. Very different." She touched one of the screens, bringing up a display of human history. Their recorded past spans only a few thousand years. Yet in that time they have changed more than most species change in 100,000 years. Their governments have risen and fallen. Their technologies have advanced at incredible speed. Their beliefs, their cultures, their ways of thinking have transformed again and again. "Change is not unusual for young species," Velcros observed. "This level of change is extremely unusual, and it explains something important about their character." Thrania pulled up another display, this one showing images of human conflicts throughout history. "They fight, High Arbiter. Not just with other species, but with each other. They have fought wars over territory, over resources, over ideas. They have destroyed and rebuilt their own civilizations multiple times." Velcro studied the images with a troubled expression. "They sound dangerous." "They are dangerous, but that is not the whole story." Thrinea changed the display again, showing images of human achievements. Towering buildings, complex machines, works of art and music, scientific discoveries. They also create. They build. They dream of things that do not exist and then make them real. They are driven by something we rarely see in other species. What is that? Ambition. They want more. Always more. More knowledge. More power. More control over their own destiny. The idea of accepting limits, of following rules set by others, goes against everything in their nature. Velcros was quiet for a long moment. "You believe this is why they refuse to join the Council." "I believe they see the Council as a cage, High Arbiter. A comfortable cage, perhaps. A cage with many benefits. But a cage nonetheless. And humans would rather struggle in freedom than live peacefully in captivity." Far across the galaxy, Captain Danny Hartwell sat in the darkness of his ship's bridge, watching the stars turn slowly outside the viewport. The starward horizon had been patrolling the border for 3 years now. 3 years of watching alien observers. 3 years of careful, patient waiting. Katie Monroe approached with 2 cups of hot coffee. She handed one to the captain and took the seat beside him. "Another quiet night," she said. "They're out there." Danny nodded toward a particular patch of space. 2 ships just beyond scanner range. "They think we can't see them, but we can. The upgrades Marcus gave us are better than they know." Danny sipped his coffee. "They've been watching for weeks now. Getting closer each time. Building up their courage." Katie studied the darkness where the alien ships waited. "Do you think they'll make a move?" "Eventually. The Council is running out of patience. Our observers on the station say the debates are getting more heated every day. Zareth is pushing hard for military action." "And the High Arbiter?" "Still cautious. But even he has limits. We've been silent for 5 years now. That's a long time to ignore someone." Katie turned to look at her captain. She had served with him for years now, had come to respect his judgment and trust his decisions. But sometimes she wondered if he doubted the path they had chosen. "Do you ever think we're wrong?" she asked. "Do you ever think we should just talk to them? End all this tension?" Danny was quiet for a while, considering the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Late at night, when I'm sitting here alone, I wonder what would happen if we just said yes. If we joined their council and accepted their help, our lives would certainly be easier. Our technology would advance faster. Our people would be safer. But we would never be free." "Not really. Every decision we made would have to pass through their system. Every new idea would have to be approved by their committees. Our future would be decided by species who have been doing things the same way for thousands of years. We would become a footnote in their story instead of the authors of our own. On the council station, Counselor Zorath called a private meeting with his allies. They gathered in a secure chamber, representatives from a dozen powerful species who shared his frustration with the human situation. "The High Arbiter's too patient," Zorath declared. "He has allowed this insult to continue for 5 years. Every day we wait, the humans grow stronger. Every day we debate, they expand further. If we do not act soon, we may lose the chance to act at all." One of his allies, a thin creature with too many eyes, spoke up. "What do you propose, Counselor?" "I propose we force the issue." "Not through military attack?" "Not yet, but through an ultimatum. We gather a fleet, the largest fleet we have ever assembled, and we bring it to human space. We demand they send a delegation to the Council, and we make it clear that refusing is no longer an option." "And if they still refuse?" Zorath's scales rippled with barely contained anger. "Then we will have our answer. Then we will know they are enemies, not merely strangers. And then we will act accordingly." The allies discussed the proposal at length. There were concerns about escalation, worries about unknown human capabilities, fears of starting a conflict that could spread across the galaxy. But in the end, Zorath's frustration proved persuasive. "We will present this plan to the full council," Zorath said. "We will demand a vote. And this time we will not accept delay." On Earth, Admiral Diane Castillo received the report of the alien meeting from a human intelligence asset who had managed to plant listening devices on the council station years ago. She read it in her office, her expression growing darker with each paragraph. Dr. Marcus Webb sat across from her, waiting. "They're planning an ultimatum," Castillo said finally. "A massive fleet assembled at our borders. A demand for immediate response." Marcus nodded slowly. "We expected this eventually. The question is whether we're ready. Are we?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "The Gateway project is progressing well. The prototype on New Haven has successfully opened small portals over short distances. But we're still years away from anything large enough for ships. Maybe a decade away from reaching another galaxy? Then we stall. Can we stall for a decade?" Castillo stood and walked to her window. Outside, the city continued its daily routine. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the alien fleet that might soon appear in their sky. "We have to," she said, "because the alternative is giving up everything we've worked for. Everything we've dreamed of." She turned back to Marcus. "Increase the resources for the Gateway project. Pull scientists from other programs if you have to. I want progress reports every week instead of every month." "And the ultimatum?" "When it comes, we do what we've always done. We stay silent. We give them nothing to react to, nothing to argue against. We make them decide whether they really want to start a war over a species that won't even talk to them." Marcus rose from his chair. "It's a dangerous game, Admiral." "All games are dangerous, Doctor. The question is what we're playing for." She looked out the window again. "We're playing for the future. Not just our future, but the future of every species in this galaxy. If we succeed, we prove that there's more than one path forward. More than one way to reach the stars. We prove that the Council's way is not the only way. And if we fail?" Castillo's expression hardened. "Then we fail having tried something no one else had the courage to try." "That's worth something, isn't it?" Marcus had no answer to that question. He simply nodded and left to return to his work. Alone in her office, Castillo allowed herself a moment of doubt. The weight of her decisions pressed down on her. The lives of billions of people rested on choices she had made, choices she was still making, but the moment passed quickly. There was too much work to be done for doubt. The aliens were coming. The ultimatum was coming. And humanity needed to be ready, not ready to fight. Not yet, ready to endure, ready to wait. ready to continue building in silence until the day they could step forward and show the galaxy what they had become. 3 years passed after the fleet went home. 3 years of quiet on the border. 3 years of continued debate in the council chambers. 3 years of whispered rumors about what the humans were doing in their isolated corner of the galaxy. Then the invitation came. Every species in the Galactic Council received the same message on the same day. It arrived through channels they did not recognize, carried by signals they could not trace. The message was simple: coordinates in deep space, far from any known system. A date, and a single sentence: humanity requests your presence for a demonstration. High Arbiter Velcros read the message in his private chambers. For a long moment he simply stared at the words, trying to understand what had changed. For 10 years the humans had refused every invitation. Now they were extending one of their own. It could be a trap, Counselor Zorath warned when Velcros shared the message with his advisors. A way to gather our leaders in one place and destroy them. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have started a war when we delivered our ultimatum, Threnia pointed out. They chose silence instead? Something has changed. Something has made them ready to talk at last. Velcros made his decision. I will go, personally. High Arbiter, the risk is too great. The risk of not going is greater. Velcros stood, his ancient body straightening with renewed purpose. For 10 years, I have wondered what the humans were building. I will not miss the chance to finally see it. 3 weeks later, a council vessel emerged from hyperspace at the designated coordinates. Velcros stood at the viewport, Zorath and Threnia beside him. What they saw made them forget to breathe. A ring of impossible size filled the view. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a circle of metal and crystal and energy that dwarfed anything the council had ever built. It hung in space like a doorway to somewhere else, pulsing with light that seemed to come from beyond the visible spectrum. Around the ring floated a fleet of human ships. Not the small patrol vessels the council had seen before. These were warships, massive and powerful, arranged in formations that spoke of military precision and overwhelming strength. There were hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, more ships than the council had gathered for their ultimatum. A transmission came through. A face appeared on the screen, a human man with steady eyes and a slight smile. High Arbiter Velcros? I'm Captain Danny Hartwell. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Velcros found his voice with difficulty. Captain, I must admit, this is not what we expected. No, I imagine it isn't. Danny's smile widened slightly. Please bring your ship closer. Admiral Castillo is waiting to meet you on the observation platform. The council vessel moved forward slowly, passing through the human fleet. Zorath's scales rippled with tension as he watched the warships glide past, each one bristling with weapons that registered on no known scale. How is this possible? He breathed. We monitored their development. They were centuries behind us. Clearly, we were wrong about something. Threnia said quietly. They docked at a station built into the ring's structure. Human guards escorted them through corridors of gleaming metal and soft light. Everything was clean, efficient, and completely alien to anything the council had seen before. Admiral Diane Castillo waited in a large chamber with windows that looked out at the massive ring. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but her eyes were sharp and her posture was straight. High Arbiter, she said, offering a slight bow. Welcome. I apologize for the years of silence. I hope today's demonstration will explain why it was necessary. Velcros studied her carefully. You have built something remarkable here, Admiral. But I do not understand what it is. Castillo turned to the window. Do you know what lies beyond the edges of this galaxy, High Arbiter? Empty space. The void between galaxies. Nothing of interest. Wrong, there are other galaxies out there. Billions of them. Each one filled with stars and planets and possibilities that no one in this galaxy has ever explored. Castillo pointed at the ring. That is a gateway. When it activates, it will open a passage to another galaxy entirely. A place where no council ship has ever traveled. A place where humanity can grow without limits or restrictions. Zareth made a sound of disbelief. Impossible. The energy required for such a journey would be astronomical. The technology does not exist. It does now. Dr. Marcus Webb stepped forward from where he had been waiting in the corner. We invented it ourselves. 10 years of work. Billions of hours of research. Complete independence from any existing galactic technology. Thrinia's eyes were wide. You built a bridge to another galaxy? Without any help from us? That is precisely the point, Ambassador. Castillo turned to face the council representatives. Your council offered us many things, technology, protection, partnership, but all of it came with strings attached. We would have to join your system, follow your rules, spend decades waiting for permission to do anything new. We could not accept those terms, she continued. Not because we are hostile to you, not because we wanted conflict, but because we knew what we were capable of and we knew your system would never let us reach that potential. Velcros was silent for a long moment, processing everything he had seen and heard. Finally he spoke. You could have explained this to us. We would have understood. Danny Hartwell stepped forward, standing beside his admiral. Would you? Would the Cathany have allowed an unproven species to build technology that challenged their dominance? Would the trade guilds have let us bypass their roots? Every time we imagined that conversation, it ended with your council voting to stop us. So you stopped having the conversation, Velcro said slowly. So we stopped having the conversation, Danny agreed, outside the window. The ring began to glow more brightly. Energy rippled across its surface, building toward something tremendous. The human fleet started moving into formation, ship after ship turning toward the gateway. We're going through now, Admiral Castillo announced. We'll establish colonies in the new galaxy. Build infrastructure. Develop technologies that will make what you've seen today look primitive. In 100 years, maybe 200, we'll return? And then? Velcros asked. Then we'll be happy to talk. Then we'll have something to offer besides promises and potential. Then we can sit at your table as equals, not as children asking for permission to grow. The ring reached full power. A circle of pure light appeared in its center, a doorway to infinity. The first human ships began passing through, vanishing into the glow. Ambassador Threnia watched them go with something that looked almost like admiration. They refused every discussion because they knew we would never stop talking long enough to let them build the future? Velcros could only nod. He had led the council for centuries. He had guided thousands of species into the galactic community. He had solved problems that seemed impossible, but he had never encountered anything like this. A species so determined to control their own destiny that they had built a door to another universe rather than accept the help of others. Captain. Danny Hartwell offered a final salute as the last. Human vessels prepared to depart. It's been interesting, High Arbiter. I hope our next meeting will be more productive. As do I, Captain. The starward horizon turned toward the gateway. Lieutenant Katie Monroe stood at her station, watching the swirling light grow closer. She thought about all the years of silence, all the waiting, all the tension. And now, finally, she understood why. Was it worth it? She asked quietly. Danny considered the question as his ship approached the threshold between galaxies. Ask me again in 100 years, he said. When we come back with fleets that make this look small. When we bring knowledge the Council has never imagined. When humanity takes its place not as a junior member of someone else's community, but as builders of our own future. The starward horizon passed through the gateway. The light swallowed them. On the observation platform, Admiral Castillo remained behind. She had chosen to stay, to guide the small group of humans who would maintain the gateway from this side, to serve as humanity's voice if the Council had questions during the long years of silence to come. She turned to face Velcros one last time. We're not enemies, High Arbiter. We never were. We simply have different ideas about how civilizations should grow. Your way works for many species. It just didn't work for us. Velcros inclined his head slowly. I am beginning to understand that, Admiral. I only hope that when your people return, they remember that the Council always wished them well. I'll make sure they know." The ring powered down slowly, the light fading to a soft glow. The human fleet was gone, vanished into the space between galaxies, headed for a future they would build with their own hands. Counselor Zorith stood in stunned silence. Threnia was already composing the report she would present to the full council. Velcro simply watched the empty space where humanity had been. "They outmaneuvered us," he said finally. "Without firing a single shot, without saying a single word. They simply refused to play our game until they were ready to change the rules entirely." He turned and walked back toward his ship. There would be debates waiting for him at the council station. Arguments and accusations and demands for explanation. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of something that felt almost like respect. The humans had done something no species had ever done before.